the idea with Samsara is to be helping your customers operate smarter across all of those verticals with an open platform that's obviously built to scale, dealing with the trillions of data points that your company is regularly processing.
Mhm.
So really exciting place to work, I imagine. So let's talk a little bit more about the edge compute. I found that pretty interesting.
Mhm.
And so when you're doing this kind of edge computing and you're helping, say, commercial drivers operate more effectively, digging a bit more maybe into that kind of cab camera example, how do you decide when you're going to be doing on-device compute on the edge versus sending something back for processing on a server remotely? Because I do understand, in the previous example that we were talking about, it sounded like we were kind of doing all edge compute. But based on our research, it sounds like sometimes there are some things that need to go back and be processed on a remote server. And so, how do you handle these trade-offs between latency and reliability and quality?
Yeah, I think it's really comes down for us in terms of the constraints for the product problem, right? Like when you really think about the problem of uh, keeping people safe in the real world, like you want to be able to ensure it's operating in like a reliable environment without like latency constraints or like connectivity constraints. And so mostly whatever we do in safety, a lot of those solutions usually operate directly off the edge, right? But we do a lot of these problems which are like don't have those constraints. Like an example would be like all the fuel solutions that I mentioned. Like we have all of them operating directly like in the cloud. There's like no latency constraints in any of those. We also work on a lot of problems around like routing, for example, like plan creation. It's less of a machine learning problem, more of an operations research problem, you could say, like where you like trying to basically do like a traveling sales plan and like generate routes for your customers in terms of what's the most efficient way for them to fulfill. So all of that like happens more like in the cloud. The one other thing we're doing a lot, like most other companies, which I didn't mention, is like we're starting to leverage LLMs. It's becoming very easy. Like we have like a AI gateway, like pretty much everybody does now, and like now that kind of opens it up where any product engineer could just like directly start building with these capabilities, especially like common solutions like summarization, data extraction, all of that, like into the product. So we have a cloud dashboard which is increasingly becoming more AI first, not from a lens of AI first for AI's sake, but really like how do you eliminate work when you see what people need to do and where could you get that leverage, right? So we're moving in that direction quite a bit. Like how do you understand the use case so we can actually like pull in more of like automations and like agentic AI with LLMs.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk about that a bit more. I mean, you said how having an AI gateway, most firms are doing that, but actually that specific term, AI gateway, I'm not really familiar with that. So yeah, tell us a bit more about this. It sounds like it's kind of, is this a way for engineers, scientists to have access to kind of like maybe pre-vetted models that you feel are safe? Or is that kind of the idea behind the gateway?
That is correct. I think think about it as there are like multiple different models that we leverage and for multiple LLMs available today. Now, there could be like the best use case for the different use cases cater to different usage patterns of LLMs in itself. Now, how do you have like one single gateway, which you can like a central endpoint, which is available within like the Samsara ecosystem, whereas a product engineer could actually like leverage that endpoint and based on their specific use case, define the constraints to say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, and like leverage this particular model for me, rather than like for building their entirely new facade, or think about like the layer or the facade for every individual model that exists out there, right? So we use like OpenAI or like the Anthropic models or like even Gemini, like, and there's also like we kind of built this gateway with a little bit of a layer of intelligence where you could be smart about like things like cost and also make sure we're keeping up with our own internal rigor around being enterprise ready in terms of security, compliance, whatnot. So all of that goes away from a data scientist or engineer's responsibility, and they could actually delegate that out to another team, and they
Cool.
just get it out of the box. So that's like a platform capability that we have.
Nice. So the gateway kind of allows you to, it allows your engineers, your scientists, your developers to be able to take into account capability versus cost considerations right out of the box.
That's correct. Yeah. And we also design, it also gives you feedback loops where, for you to, as you're almost think about it as a training ground where before I'm ready to deploy this across all the customers and get it really into production, you could even get very quick feedback loops from not just try it out, but also understand cost profiles, but also understand quality and promote to production. So it kind of gives you this ecosystem which you could use. Like a example solution that which I thought was pretty cool that somebody built was a product engineer in the org built this solution where one of the common customer problems that we had heard was, hey, we want to identify when our drivers are misusing the vehicle assigned to them. Meaning, lots of companies have policies. When they assign you a vehicle, you're supposed to use it for specific needs. Now, the only way for you to do that historically was you have to sieve through all the content of video footage or randomly pick stuff and or core sample for individual, right? Now, you can technically delegate that problem to a video LLM model, and then which can automatically with the constraints you offer, it can actually flag things. So we actually built that a product engineer who's not done a lot of data science in the past was just able to pick it up and build it. Now that's the capabilities it's unlocking. So which means a lot of engineers, the lines have blurred quite a bit in terms of these different engineering stereotypes that
Yeah.
used to exist. Yeah.